So thank you everyone for joining us in the year 2022. This is awesome for all of us to be back in the room. So my name is Neil Colley. I'm a worldwide go-to-market leader for QuickSight. So Jesse and I have both been with QuickSight and AWS for 5 years. Over to you, Jesse.
Hi everyone, my name is Jesse. I lead the QuickSight solution architecture team.
All right, so let's get started here, Okay, so from an agenda perspective, we're going to cover off on a couple different areas. So our areas of investment, we're going to deep dive into some of the new capabilities. So there's going to be some demoing and talking that Jesse's going to follow up with. And then I plan to recap the session. All right, so let's get started here. So for what QuickSight is, it's going to definitely provide you a unified BI experience for all your analytic needs, right? We built QuickSight to be fast, provide you that consistent performance, as well as provide you a great pay-per-session pricing or consumption-based pricing as well. All right, so some of those benefits are going to be adding and having policy-based governance at scale, right? So the ability to have row-level, column-level security built into QuickSight, being able to deliver those insights anywhere. So internal portals, external portals. From a mobile perspective, you can embed individual widgets as well as embed a full iframe. Again, it's going to give you all those unified hyperscale experience, and then you're going to get more with less from a cost performance perspective. And then our augmented analytics in terms of what we do from a machine learning perspective is going to provide you some of the best of breed capabilities as well. So one of the things that we're super excited about this year is what a unified approach involves, right? So from a legacy perspective, you know, we've all had scenarios in which we've had these silo environments where you got to log into tool A to do your reporting. You got to log into maybe 2 or 3 tools for tool B to do your dashboarding. Then there may be like an embedded analytics tool that you're using. And then, of course, if you want to do some of the ML capabilities, that's going to, you know, be another tool or set of tools, right? And so, you know, and then, of course, from a training perspective, you know, you're going to have distinct teams that's able to train your end users as well from that perspective, and then just different UIs for each, right? And so with QuickSight, it's going to provide you that unified BI experience, same UI, and there's going to be, there's no additional training required because you're going to have the same UI experience. All right. So working backwards. In 2019, we announced a pay-per-session, or in 2018, my bad. And then from an ML Insights perspective, in 2019, we brought you the capabilities using the random cut forest algorithm to do things like forecasting, anomaly detection, in an unsupervised learning fashion, provide you those insights. And then in 2020, we announced some of the OEM capabilities around embedding as well. And then from a queue perspective, that's when you start to first get a gauge for what we're going to be able to accomplish from a natural language query perspective. And then in 2021, last year, was all about alerts and personalization, as well as other BI features as well. Pace of innovation has been pretty incredible over the last 2 years, 150 plus features. And I think since Jesse and I both started, probably like 500 features over the last 5 years, so it's been incredible. And then, not to steal the thunder, but we're going to talk about serverless paginated reporting as well. We're going to get into some of the next best functionality around the why and forecasting from a QuickSight perspective, and then also visual-based embedding from a one-click fashion. So in 2022, super busy. So we announced 1 billion rows with Spice, paginated reporting, one-click embedding, as well as the ability to programmatically move dashboards. So if you've been with us for a couple of years, you probably heard about assets as code. We're going to talk about enhanced APIs as well. And so following that from a theming perspective, areas of investment, empowering end users, right? So providing a rich reader experience, right? So the consumers of the data. Also involving customization and the richness of the author reports. And then from a programmatic control for developers, AWS has always been builder-centric, so making sure that we provide those framework of capabilities for that. And then in terms of the governance piece, visibility and control and automation around the ability to scale for admins. So I'll turn it over to Jesse. He's going to take you through a demo and then double-click on some of those features. There you go.
Great. Thanks, Neil.
Yep.
All right. So starting out with our first major theme of investment around empowering end users. So these are going to be things that are focused more on the consumers, the readers of what we call in QuickSight. Two major things that we launched this week that you may have seen in Adam's keynote on Tuesday. That box on the upper right. So Amazon QuickSight Q is the natural language query part of QuickSight, where anyone with no technical skills can type a question out in plain English using natural language and get an answer. So we added a couple new question types to Q this week. One of them being forecasting, so on any time series data, being able to forecast that out into the future. And the second one, which I think is even more powerful, is this why question type. So if you do see something that went up or went down in the data, that's not the beginning, or it's not the end of your questioning, right? That usually starts a new question path of you want to figure out what caused that to happen. So why basically runs something similar to the contribution analysis that we have that was sitting behind anomaly detection and some of the time series analysis, but you can answer why questions using Q as well now. Users can get insights faster, so when they ask questions with Q, they now have the ability to pin them to what we call a pin board, so that they're easily more retrieved for any future access. So you don't have to keep asking the same question over and over. They can add it to their pin boards. If they're on a dashboard and they've set a bunch of filters and different permutations of parameters and such, they can save those as bookmarks and then share those bookmarks with other users. You're going to see increased performance across the board. In terms of insights in new ways, so something that Neil alluded to is that we launched paginated reporting this week. So that went out on Monday night. We're going to show you a much deeper demo of paginated reporting, but from the end user perspective, they can get these either PDFs or CSV outputs emailed to them on a custom schedule. And I think one of the coolest parts of it is that we actually archive those up to a year in the past, so you can do point-in-time reporting. So if I want to see, I got this PDF, but I want to see exactly what this looked like as the data was 6 months ago, we're archiving all those, and the users can go download them whenever they'd like. Accessibility has been a big area of investment and will continue to be going forward. So we made some big strides on the accessibility of our dashboards. We've done some things in the area of customization and giving more power to these end users and more customization capabilities. Again, is going to be a big theme for us going into next year too. So just a couple in the area that were recent were giving them the ability to hide fields on tables and pivots that maybe aren't as relevant for them, and configure things like if I want a comma or a decimal place or a period, I should say, as my decimal separator, we're saving those at a per user level. So again, we'll do more and more localization, but this is one in that area. So throughout this part of the presentation, what I'm going to do is we're going to go through one slide of here's the persona of what we're developing for, so in this case the end user, and then we're going to demo some of those features, and then we'll come back to the slide and then go through the author stuff, demo, admin stuff, demo. So with that, let's switch over. All right, I should be seeing my screen now. So here I've got an example dashboard. Let's make this fit the whole screen. All right, so just focusing on a couple of those new question types that we have with Q. So maybe just taking one step back. A big part of Q is dashboards will get you so far, right? We, as dashboard designers, we try to build as many sets of filters and drill downs and ways to answer follow-up questions as we can, but inevitably it's gonna dead end somewhere. There's no way that, it's not realistic to build a dashboard that can answer every single question under the sun. So that's really where Q comes in, is to be able to let users answer their own questions when they see something interesting in a dashboard. So in this case, I'm looking at kind of fictitious sales data from my SaaS software provider, something like an AWS type of customer. So let's start with show me, I want to look into our monthly sales trends. All right, so I want to focus on a couple of our regions here, being the Americas and EMEA. So I'm looking for a monthly trend here. So this part specifically is not new, but just notice like that using natural language terms like compared to, or I could say versus, it understands that I don't just want to filter to those things, I want to filter to them, and I also want to compare them both on the same visual. So just kind of a quick nod to that it is natural language processing. But I do notice here that like typically I have a spike in December, but in this case I had a spike in November, but it kind of dropped in December for EMEA. So that might be something I want to dig into. So here's where a why question might come in. Why did sales drop in EMEA in December 2020? So what Q's doing now is it scans the other dimensions from the data and the actual values in each one of those dimensions to figure out what were the biggest drivers, contributors to either that spike or that drop, increase or decrease. So it found from a city perspective, London had the largest decrease, so it went down 46%, and that was responsible for 55% of that overall decrease that we were seeing. Not surprisingly, that UK was the biggest country contributor. There was actually a bright spot in that month, so even though there were some values that went down, there was one particular company that went from a very low to a very high number. And you can, while it does, it runs some heuristics on the data, it does a little bit of pre-processing on it to figure out what are the types of what are the fields that likely were the biggest contributors. You can change it on the fly as well. So if I wanted to see maybe by product, what was the biggest contributor to that drop? So my big old database product unfortunately had declining sales in December 2020. So that's essentially what the why question does. You give it a time period, you could say this year, last year, a month, a quarter. Give it a metric that you want to look at. It scans the rest of your data and figures out what was the biggest driver to either that rise or that fall. So now I've gained some insight into why we went down in 2020. Maybe I want to see where we're going next. So now I can ask for something like, show me a forecast. Monthly sales, let's focus it on EMEA. So here, the forecasting that how you have available to you as an author also comes through to the reader's experience. You can add as many types of filters, so you can see here that it's filtered to EMEA. We actually added also an answer breakdown section here for the end users to tell them like exactly what we were doing when we created this answer so that it can earn some trust with them. But yeah, we can see our projected values out here. So maybe my last question might be something like, in order to achieve that growth that we're seeing the forecast out for 2023, maybe I want to see who spent the most in current periods to see who I want to, spend my efforts on in terms of contacting them for next year. So let's ask something like, who spent the most in 2022? So I'll get a list of our top customers. And if this is something that I want to come back to later, or maybe I want to even share it with someone else, a couple other new things that we added to Q is this concept of a pin board. So if I go and add this to my pin board, this is specific to me, to my user. So you see that I've added some pins before we jumped on stage here, but here's the latest visual that we added to the pin board. So whenever I come back, it's always going to have these, and As the data refreshes, these visuals are going to refresh as well. But it's a really quick and easy way for me to get to those insights very quickly. And then lastly, if this is something really interesting that I want to send to somebody else, I also have the option to share the visual, which is just going to give me a URL. As long as someone has access to that same topic, then when they click this link, it'll basically open Q in their QuickSight console with that question preloaded in there. All right, so those are the key highlights on the end user side. Let's flip back to our slides here. So moving on to the dashboard developers, or the authors, the analysts. So we've got two slides here on the analysts. The first is more focused on the visualization features, and the second more on like data preparation, data connectivity, and such. So again, hitting on paginated reports here, but more from the authoring side of this. So traditionally, these type of operational reports and your interactive dashboards, you usually build them in two different platforms, two different tools. So I think one nice benefit, which Neil called out as well, is that this is a single authoring experience for both dashboards and for operational reports. You can configure custom schedules. In the demo, you'll see the highly formatted parts of it where I can have like headers and footers and sections and page breaks. You can choose which visuals you want to actually include CSV files of as well. But we'll jump into the paginated reports in a bit. In terms of a couple different ways of delivering insights to the users, so one click is a huge step forward in terms of the whole embedding experience. So QuickSight has always had embedding. I'm sure many of you in the room here maybe embed QuickSight into your own applications. But it always was something more, a developer would do, API-driven type of operations, which makes sense if I'm building this into my product. But if there's use cases where just me as an analyst, I want to go put something into a wiki internally, into Salesforce, some kind of internal application, that one-click embedding really enables any analyst to put these in front of the users wherever they are. As part of, I guess kind of tied to the paginated reports release, we're also allowing authors to publish just the specific sheets when they go to publish something as a dashboard. So that means that I could have a single analysis and I could publish 5 different dashboards, each with a different combination of sheets in them. Whereas previously, all the sheets you had in your analysis would always go to the dashboard. So it just makes it nice where like I could have kind of a scratch sheet where I'm playing around and doing testing some new things out, but when I go to actually publish the dashboard, I don't have to include that test sheet in there. Also, as I'm publishing, this was another major announcement this last week, is automated Q topic creation. So Q topics, it's not like it took a lot of work before, but now when I go to publish a new dashboard, you'll see a new checkbox in there where you can either tie that to an existing Q topic, or you can ask it to make you a new Q topic on the fly. So then it's going to scan the data sets that you're using in the analysis, look at some of the qualitative aspects of those fields, like are we finding location data, like geospatial data in here? Do they look like names? And it'll assign some of those semantic types that you used to do manually when you're creating topics manually. But in any case, just a super easy way of like, hey, I built a dashboard, I'm publishing, I'm sharing to some other people. Again, maybe it doesn't answer every question that they might have, so I'm just going to ask it to create a Q topic on the fly, and it's automatically going to associate it with that dashboard. And then just paginated reports, just calling out that that's also like a new delivery method. Particularly on the tables and pivot tables type of visualizations, we did a lot of investment, and this doesn't really account for all of the things that happened this year. We're really just focusing on stuff from the last month or two. But inline bar charts are something that I'm going to show you today that's in preview. Earlier in the year, we did do the images and links in tables and pivot tables. Increased field limit, just meaning that you can put more fields into the pivot tables for more dense and rich displays. And then on new visuals and enhancements to our existing ones, first off on maps, we added some new base layers to the maps. A pet peeve of mine is whenever I used a dark theme on my dashboards, the maps always kind of stood out like a sore thumb because they were always a light gray background. So there's now a dark theme map, there's a satellite image map, there's a street view map. So you've got some customization capabilities there. Something just from this past week is doing point clusters. So if you have a really dense amount of data on your maps, you're plotting down to a city level or a postcode level and you're zoomed out pretty far, you have a lot of overlapping points, right? It's hard to see all that data. So I think these are going to make a lot more sense when I show them to you, but point clusters will kind of you could say that it'll say, I have 40 points in this area, and then as you zoom in, they'll kind of break apart once it has more space to display them. Radar charts, brand new chart type that's being added. Text boxes, while you could use insights as a way to add custom text to your dashboards before, just making that a lot easier, a lot more intuitive to add text with a new object type there. And small multiples is actually a pretty big feature. Like a lot of our customers have been waiting for this for years, and it's not a small feature either. So it's for doing comparative analysis, as it says on the slide here. Rather than having to say I have some line charts and I want to see the line chart, one for every country that I have in my data. Rather than having to make a separate visual for every single country, I can say, like, here's my chart, make a matrix of these by some value in my dimension. So it kind of will trellis them all out. But in any case, I think it's going to help once you see some of these in action. So let's switch back over here. All right, so I'll first show you a couple finished examples of these, but then we'll walk through quickly, checking time, how actually build some of these on the fly as well. So World Cup's going on right now, so we did a quick analysis on some of the top players in the World Cup. So these are the 100 best players in the world. So a couple things to highlight here. So this is one of the new radar charts. It's also called a spider chart. There's a couple different names for it, but in QuickSight we're calling it a radar chart. Small multiples, there is one example down here on the bottom where I'm looking at how many players of each type of position, attackers, midfielders, defenders, do each country have in the top 100 players. But this is really just one chart. You see as I select it, it's just a bar chart, but I've got a new field well here where I can say, make small multiples of these for each country. So we're doing small multiples, at least in this first release, on bar charts, line charts, and pie charts, I think. But we are going to enable these on all visuals. Something that isn't new this week necessarily, but I think is just worth kind of highlighting is just, again, some of the investments that we've been making in the tables and pivot tables. So putting inline images, hyperlinks, and so on. Here I can actually jump out and go view their player page. Again, not new, but just kind of some cool stuff you can do with tables to really just make them feel more like a full-blown app just themselves. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Just to kind of show you how those images get in there. So as you put all your fields in your field wells, like a couple of these are actually URLs. So player photo is a URL, country flag is a URL, and when you go to field styling, if I go pick one of those fields like country flag, notice that I said for URL options to show that URL actually as an image. Or you could show it as a hyperlink, so someone could go click on it. But this is what that actual data looks like underneath. Even just like small stuff like changing the row heights, adding text wrap, like those are things that were added even just in this last year. All right, so let's do a couple of these from scratch to explore some of the deeper options in there. So let's go add a new visual here. So we'll start with some small multiples. Let's go grab our profit margin, look at that over time, maybe quarterly. And before I show you the multiples, we also added some line styling options. So if you come in here into the data series, I only have one metric on here. That's why I only see one data series. But this is brand new this past month where I can change just line styles. Like, do I want to smooth it out? Do I want to do a stepped line chart where things are just unique values? And they act more like a square step. If I have many different time series on the same line chart, like maybe you got 5 different things on there, it's really common to try and visually depict one from another using different line styles, like making them dashed lines or dotted lines, or changing the width of the line in addition to changing the color of it, right? So just tons of new options there for the styling. I could even just turn off the line and just put the dots there. Like a lot of old Excel charts, like you got bars and then you have lines and then sometimes you have like dots on some of those would represent something else. So just a ton of flexibility to make some super combo charts in a way. But that's not really what I was trying to show you. What we're going towards is small multiples. So let's go add another dimension up here. Let's go grab our products. So let's pretend we're trying to do some analysis on figuring out what are our most profitable products. So we'll show you a couple different ways that you'll be able to do that with some of these new features. So I'm looking at our profit margin by product. I'm messing around with the styling, so it's maybe not as easy to see anymore. Let's go change that back. All right, so anything above the line, positive profit margin. So I can see I got a problem with my big old database product again here. But just a really easy way to just kind of add multiple permutations of a visual. So just super quick visual interpretation of a lot of data at one time. So that's small multiples. Let's go check out the radar chart. So you saw on the slides that some of these are in preview. Expect them in the coming weeks. They're very, very near term. But if you go into QuickSight after the session today, you're not going to see the radar chart, just to be clear. but if you come talk to us afterwards, we can help you turn it on. So radar charts, you can either give it a bunch of different metrics, like I'll take our profit margin and the profit itself, the quantity of orders, the number of sales. Let's maybe look at the average discount we're applying to each of those. And maybe I want to look at that across all of my segments. Or we're doing profit analysis, so all of my products actually. So for instance, like this green one, contact matcher. We're selling a lot of it, huge quantity, very high discount. We're selling a lot, so sales are pretty high. But look at where it's at from a profitability and a profit margin perspective. So we might conclude that because it was such a high discount, it's why it's kind of dragging it in on the profitability side. So just one application of using a radar chart, but really good for multi-dimensional, multi-metric kind of analysis. Oops, I hit my home button. One sec. All right, let's take a look at some of the table options. So let's grab our products, some numbers. Simple table here. One of the things you saw on the slide was adding visuals actually to the tables themselves. So you could always do conditional formatting and add icons and colors and things like that. But adding inline bar charts is something that we're adding very soon here. So here under visuals, I can say I want to add data bars, similar to like a spark line where I might have a little time trend there, but not something over time. Like I just want to actually show the value itself. So if I'll say I want to go pick my sales field, and notice I'll get kind of little inline bar charts. Let's maybe do on a grayscale inside my table itself. So kind of neat new addition to just spice up your tables a little bit. What else? Okay, let's touch on maps real quick, and then we'll get to reporting. So as I mentioned in the new point maps, or in maps when you have really high density, Yeah, let's even just start with something like this. So here's all of the cities where I have customers around the world. You can see a ton of density here in Europe, and it's really kind of hard to see where they're all at. So if I go to my formatting options here, there's a new section here for points, where there's basic is what the old default is, or current default still. But there's a new option there that's called cluster points. So now it's going to group them together into kind of bubbles, and then as you zoom in and it has more room, it'll start to break them apart. Kind of sort of similar, maybe you're looking at properties on Zillow or some, looking at houses, and they've got a similar kind of experience to this. There's X amount of properties in this area, and then as you zoom in, it kind of breaks them apart. And then a quick note on the base maps. So here's where you can change the different types of base maps. So satellite imagery or the dark theme. Particularly if you're in like transportation and logistics, having the street maps on there is nice. All right. So paginated reporting. Let's take a look at that. So we've been doing kind of an analysis of our profitability and our sales. Maybe as an analyst, I now want to go design a new report that's going to go out to all of my sales leaders. So maybe I would have gone and done that in a totally different product before. But here, as I go to make a new sheet, and we keep talking about like this is all in one UI. It's all in one UI. Notice when you make a new sheet now, you can choose what type of layout you want for the sheet. Is it going to be a dashboard? Is it going to be something interactive? Or do you want it to be something that's going to wind up being printed out? So here's this new paginated report here. Pick your paper style and size, portrait, landscape. So notice this looks a little different than what a normal analysis sheet looks like. Right? You've got these new concepts here like headers and sections and footers, but you have the same exact visual types that you do on a normal dashboard. So for instance, like in this section here, let's go start to build out like a little sales performance table. So we'll do this like a little quarterly sales report. Add a filter just for this year. Let's go this year. Cool. So now I just got these 4 quarters. Let's actually do it at a quarter level. So I'm not even going to mess around with the headers or anything quite yet, but notice just as I click away there that it says on the bottom here, prints across pages. So it's not that you couldn't print stuff to PDF in QuickSight before, but it was always like a what you see is what you get. So if you just had visualizations on there, and what I mean by that is not tables, like the normal PDF printing worked fine. But if you had tables that had long scrolls, like thousands, tens of thousands of records in them, whenever you print it as a PDF, you would just get what fit on the screen at the time. It doesn't like permutate through all of the data and print them all across different pages. So that's a big part of what this paginated reporting is that ability to, we'll dynamically keep printing stuff on multiple pages. So tables will always print across pages, but stuff like a visual, you can kind of control what does repeat on each page and what doesn't. So like I'll add another section here, move it just above. And in this one, maybe I want to go add just some kind of summary visuals. Like I want to just look at our sales by segment. And let's go add another. We'll just look at like a waterfall chart across our regions. Get that legend out of the way, save us some room. Then there's stuff like adding headers and footers. So if I were to go here's the new text box, I can add it from here. You'll also see an actual visual type for the text box down here. So just super easy way to go add some static text. But we also introduced some new variables, like if I want to put the current date of when this report got printed. This other one is here for page numbers. Like I'd likely put that in the footer there. But just start with something simple like Sales report, quarterly sales report. Can't spell right now, but you get the point. Right, rich text formatting, colors, hyperlinks, images, text sizes, right, all that stuff. So you can start to see how this is coming together. Similarly, like I might put a footer on it. I have a kind of more polished example here that I pre-did. Looks kind of similar, right? So this is the part that's going to print across pages because I have multiple regions with multiple products. I put the page number down here as well, the date that the report was generated on. I'll show you an example output of what that looks like. So that's page 2, page 3, page 4. So these can go up to 1,000 pages, I think is the current limit on it, 1,000 pages. And then remember that like you get the point in time history with it. So let's go there. So I've created a cool report. Now I want to go publish it and share it out with some people. So here I'm going to go to publish. A couple things to highlight here even before we publish. This part is new. Which sheets do you want to publish? Seems like a small thing, but it makes a big difference for those of you who are authors in QuickSight. So I could say I actually only want to go publish this new one, which I didn't rename, but it's just called Sheet 9 right now. Another new thing, here's the auto queue topic creation. So I could say, let's enable a topic for this analysis, where I could tie it to an existing one so that whenever someone goes to the dashboard, it'll default to the topic that I want. Or I could just say, can you go create a new topic for me on the fly? So it'll go through all the data sets and add them to a new topic. So this is a pretty big deal here. In any case, so let's just call this reinvent rules. Also misspelled, but you get the point again. So when you publish a report, the first thing it's going to ask you is, typically you want to put it on a schedule at that point. So you could either just generate like a one-off PDF of it, but typically you're going to add it to a schedule. Here's where you're going to control your scheduling. You could add as many schedules as you want. You could say, I want to send it on the first day of the month, also on Friday every week, and at 9 o'clock and Friday and 5 o'clock on every Friday. So you can add as many schedules as you want. Give it a name. You can choose whether you want to include CSV outputs of that. So which visuals do you want to include a CSV output on? When to send it, who to send it to, right? All the stuff that you would expect here. And then lastly, do you want to actually attach the file, or do you want to just give them a link to it? So from a data privacy standpoint, some of our customers don't want to actually attach it. They want them to authenticate to go see it. So that's why we offer the download link as well. So just to see what this, rather than waiting for the schedule to run here, let's just go back and I'll show you the original one. Yeah, this one. All right, so here's the one that I was showing you earlier, right? Here's the point in time part of it. So I can see here's the time that I ran it on November 29th at 1:52 in the afternoon. Here's what the data looked like. Versus, here's my mock November report versus this is, my mock October report, right? Also, we're now kind of back with our reader hat on. We're not really authors anymore, but this is more the end user side of it. So if I go to the recent snapshots, I can see from that run that happened, on X date, I want to go download that PDF or that CSV file. So we're keeping these up to a year in history. Cool. All right. I think that's reporting. So we're going to wrap up. I got two more quicker ones where we're going to go through some of the data side of it. Major one, Spice. So Spice, the limit up to before this week was 500 million rows or 500 gigabytes per Spice data set. So we just doubled that. So it's 1 billion rows or a terabyte of data per Spice data set. A major increase there. And you also enjoy 30% faster performance on all Spice data sets. So Yeah, major milestone there. On the data set management side, so there's this concept of parent and child relationships. Not required, but it's something that you can do in QuickSight, where maybe you have certain owners, like maybe a central team owns one part of the data set, like all the core metrics, but they can allow other people to build data sets on top of that. Like maybe they just want to upload an Excel file and join it to it, or they want to add their own tables to it as well. So that concept we kind of call parent and child. So the row level security, RLS, now will pass down to the child data sets. We launched a few months ago the data set details page, just one consolidated page to look at not only like the details of the data set, but also like where it's being used, what users have access to it, what analyses are they being used in, what dashboards they're being used in, what queue topics are they being used in. So that's all in one place now. Connectivity, we just launched a Databricks connector this past month. So a lot of our customers are really excited about that. Data set parameters. Think of these, so you can use parameters in QuickSight, right? You can now use these in your custom SQL. You could use them in filters in your data set, in a calculated field in your data set. So it's taking inputs from an end user, that's what a parameter really is, and passing them into the data set layer. So kind of affecting things a little bit like one layer back before your analysis itself. Bunch of new calculated fields came out, so a whole suite around work days, an extended suite on things like string manipulation, contain, starts with, ends with. You could do a lot of this stuff with like the locate function, but just trying to make things, adding more of these abstracted functions to make things easier. Switch is kind of analogous to the case statement, like switch the values of one dimension to just, it's like re-aliasing, renaming something is probably my best way of describing that. And this last one, so you can use parameters in calculated fields, but if they had multiple values in them, meaning there wasn't a single select, but you're letting people choose multiple, kind of like in an array in a way, you couldn't use those in calculated fields before. So we are allowing you to use those in calculated fields, and in order to do that, we added a couple new functions, in and not in. So I could say, is the value in this parameter or not? And like that parameter could have many selections in it. So you can kind of sort of like check if something is in some array in a way. And that array is defined by the user just by the control you give them. All right, so that's on the data side. I don't have any demos for you on that side, sorry. So now moving on to developers. So when we think developers, usually we're thinking embedding, but we're also thinking like CI/CD and version control, content migration, that kind of stuff. So this expanded suite of APIs, this is something if you've been a QuickSight customer for some time and are close with our team, you may have heard us refer to this as assets as code over the last year. That's kind of what we were calling this feature before. So just trying to say like, this is the same thing. We're not calling it assets as code, we're just calling it that, hey, we have new APIs now. But the whole point of these APIs is to allow you to make changes to create brand new, and to manage all of your BI assets. So, and particularly the dashboards. So like, we had this concept of a template in QuickSight before. Like I could migrate a dashboard from dev to test to prod by creating a template. But that template, we wouldn't let you download it. Like if I ran like describe data set, we'd actually give you the JSON. Like here's the JSON definition of the data set. But on dashboards, we wouldn't give that to you. We just gave you an ID for it. So, simplifying what this is here is you can get the definition of a dashboard as JSON, which means I could build a brand new dashboard just using code, never even going into the UI. I could make a change to it. Like say I'm doing a multi-tenant application and customer A gets the standard dashboard, but customer B, they may paid for a premium package, or I want to give them a couple extra visuals. Like I could programmatically control all of that. I could have a library of kind of visuals and have the JSON code ready, and then when someone purchases that package, like deploy a new dashboard just for that customer, just by editing these definitions themselves. Tons of use cases for it. I mean, just being able to have it and download it, you could check it into your own Git, do version control, diffs on it, whatever you want to do with them. They're going to help with migrating from other BI tools, right? We have a very predictable structure. We're giving you the structure of what our dashboards look like. A lot of other tools give you that as well. So it gives you a path to start to make automated tools to migrate from other platforms. So that's just that first bullet. There's a new API to migrate a queue topic between accounts. This account creation and deletion. Yeah, I think this is pretty important, particularly if your organization spins up a lot of AWS accounts. Like some of our customers have a centralized QuickSight account and a centralized, not just QuickSight account, but like all their data warehouses and their BIs all in one account. Some of them create a different account per project, and they want to be able to spin these up and spin these down really quickly and automatically. So APIs to completely deploy an account, deploy dashboards into it, like full automatic deployment of getting stuff out to your users or your customers. And on the embedding side, fine-grained visual embedding. Instead of embedding an entire dashboard, you can embed just a visual. Embedding queue for an anonymous use case, where you don't have to actually manage the users in QuickSight. You can actually submit questions to queue, like if you wanted to have like a little voice input or a chat bot in your application, and at some point you want to send that question off to queue, we basically have an SDK for you to do that, so you don't have to actually show the UI in there. You can pass the questions in programmatically. So the one demo I have for you on this one is a little bit of that enhanced APIs. So also want to call some attention to this portal, which you may or may not have ever seen before, but this is something that our team really puts a lot of investment into. We actually just recently gave it a facelift, which we call Demo Central. So just great resource for so this is public facing, anyone can access this. Tons of nice dashboards to give you some inspiration, some cool queue topics to play around with. We have really detailed demos of specific features like narratives or some calculations and whatnot. There's a bunch of tips and tricks. So just a great resource in general. And this is, oh, never mind. Let's go to, okay, let's just pick one of these sales ones. So actually one of the best things about this portal is not just that you get to see some dashboards, but you can actually go reverse engineer anything in here. So notice there was a little analysis icon there. So when you click on any dashboard and you click on this little analysis, you have the analysis available to you. You can see exactly how it was built, pull it apart, see all the calculations and all that kind of stuff. Let's see. Of course, between this morning and this demo, there was one called Assets as Code that I'm not seeing here anymore. Maybe we changed it. All right, well, I've got it on a slide later, so I may not be able to show you this right here. Okay, we'll come back to that if once we're doing the wrap up, and I'll take another look and see if we can come back to that one. All right, so we got 10 minutes here. Last slide on terms of features, and then we'll wrap everything up and have some time for questions as well. So the last area of investment is around administration. So QuickSight, one of the great benefits of it, it is super scalable, right? Serverless, really never have to worry about performance. But as you grow the amount of users and content in your account, it's pretty critical for those admins to be able to govern all that and at least just have visibility into what's going on in the account. So that first bullet there on visibility is something that came out just in the last couple of weeks. So it's a brand new console where admins can see every single asset in the account, but also make batch changes to them. So common use case, a new employee joins the company, and you want to mirror their permissions to an existing employee on the team. So I might need to go search everything that user A has access to, and then also share that with user B. Or user A leaves the organization. I need to go transfer the ownership of all their assets to somebody else, right? So those are a couple of use cases for it, but lots of other ones as well. We did a lot with CloudWatch this year. So all of the dashboard load performance, visual load performance, general health of your account, all of those metrics are captured through CloudWatch. And then just a little more recently, like in the last month, spice consumption metrics are in there. So if you want to be alerted when you're at 90% of your spice consumption, that's available through CloudWatch too. Something I don't have on this slide is actually in CloudWatch, there's now an out-of-the-box dashboard on all your QuickSight metrics too. Data governance, these were some assets, particularly like in financial services, life sciences, there are plenty of other industries where personally identifiable information and privacy is it's a big focus. So we always encrypted data that we had in Spice, but they were encrypted using keys managed by AWS. So now you can bring your own encryption keys to manage your data in Spice. You can manage the data source credentials, like connecting to Redshift. Rather than giving all of your users the Redshift username and password, you can manage all those through Secrets Manager now and rotate. You might have different password rotation rules, so you can manage that all outside of QuickSight now. Launching a couple new regions in the next couple weeks. Some things around multi-tenancy, adding a new UI for namespace management, partition folders. And if you're doing embedding using anonymous embedding, you could do row-level securities through something we call tags, but we're adding more OR logic to those. So anyway, I was planning to show you the asset management console, but I took too much time. So we're at 7 minutes. So I want to make sure we have enough time to recap and give you all an opportunity to ask questions as well. So I'm going to hand it back over to Neil.
All right. Thank you.
Of course.
All right. Let's see. So, PowerPoint. All right, so let's recap real quick. So a couple different things that we covered off was the why in the forecast question. So that's what Jesse started out with. We highly encourage you to try this functionality out. Paginated reporting in the cloud. When I started 5 years ago, I saw this as a gap, so I was constantly in the ear of product, Jesse and I as well. So it's very exciting that we're launching this feature. More visualization options. We're going to continue to double down on this. So we saw the small multiple charts. We saw radar charts. If you have other visualization requests, let us know. As you can see, our pace of innovation is pretty incredible. From my perspective, the last 5 years, we announced 1 billion rows in Spice. So when I first started, it was like 100 million rows. And so, 5 years from now, who knows what the exponential growth of that will be, 30% faster. And then the enhanced APIs. It's something that's it's going to be a game-changing.
This is what I was trying to show you.
Yeah.
But you get the actual JSON output. But in Demo Central, you could actually change one of these. You could say instead of a bar chart, I want a line chart, and then you could redeploy the dashboard and see it in real time. I make a change to the dashboard, how does it change this? Or I can make a change to this, how does it affect the dashboard? Exactly. It's just kind of a cool playground that you can do.
Exactly. And then just to kind of tie it all back together, we believe that we have world's first from a serverless perspective, so you don't have to play any guessing games in terms of under-architecting or over-architecting, whether it's reporting and moving off some of those legacy tools. I mean, in our previews, we've had companies, life sciences, financial services, where they have 5, 7, 8 different BI tools, are now looking to see how they can consolidate with QuickSight. From a modern dashboard reporting perspective, you've seen that functionality, queue, and then the ability to just embed QuickSight any and everywhere. And so what we see from an embedding perspective, It could be a value add to your application, or it could be actually a new revenue opportunity, for a new custom application in which you're trying to monetize on your data. And you can scale out in those scenarios, whether it's 10,000 users, hundreds of thousands of users. QuickSight's just going to scale with you from that perspective. And then just moving on, last couple things here. Here's like the remaining events from a QuickSight perspective on Wednesday. We have cool parties tomorrow night and tonight as well. So definitely reach out on LinkedIn. We'd be happy to talk to you, and grab some coffee or whatever. And then, Thursday, there's the last remaining sessions too. One important thing we want to call out is definitely join our QuickSight community. It was a feature that a lot of customers have asked for, because you do have that with other companies and functionalities. And so our community is a great place to interact with other customers who are utilizing QuickSight, as well as we have experts constantly monitoring. And then definitely take advantage of utilizing Demo Central. I can tell you that's very well adopted by a lot of our customers, but definitely if you see demos or different things that we should add to it, just feel free to give us that feedback as well. And then finally, thank everyone so much for joining us for this session. It's been a great week for QuickSight, great year for QuickSight as well.